It's not just rare earths. America has no rational policy for mining copper, the one metal American lifestyles depend upon and very few people are thinking about. Over the last month, there's been a lot of contradictions. In late January, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, there was a mine collapse. 227 people died. On February 2nd, there was a resolution that passed, H.R. 4090 in the House of Representatives, making domestic copper a policy priority. On February 3rd, President Trump announced a $12 billion Project Vault, which stockpiles copper and other strategic minerals. On February 4th, our Development Finance Corporation decided to finance 100,000 tons of refined copper cathode from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Yikes. On February 16th, the Department of Justice defends blocking the Pebble Mine in Alaska, which is the largest U.S. copper deposit in the United States. Huh? And here's the thing. This administration already told us copper imports are a national security threat. That's not my opinion. That's their own Section 232 finding. So let's look at why the United States administration is actually doing what it's doing and what they're doing about it. Section 232, we say one thing, we do another. Here's the timeline we're living with copper. In February of 2025, President Trump launched Section 232 investigation. It decided that copper imports were declared a national security threat based on the investigation. In July of 2025, the Commerce Secretary confirmed the finding recommending tariffs. We've all heard a lot about tariffs. In August of 2025, a 50% tariff was imposed on semi-finished copper products, pipes, wires, rods, sheets, cables, and connectors. The stated administration goal is to reinvigorate United States copper production and reduce import dependency. It sounds like a minerals independence agenda, right? MAGA self-sufficiency, except refined copper cathode, the already processed 99.99% pure product, is exempt from Section 232 tariffs. The Development Finance Corporation did a deal with the national mining company in the Democratic Republic of Congo called Jacamine. The deal was for 100,000 tons of refined copper cathode from the Democratic Republic of Congo. It sailed right through tariff-free. We're not even importing raw material to process here in the United States. We're importing the finished refined product from a corrupt Chinese-operated mine in the Congo. Meanwhile, we have a deposit in Alaska that for the last 20 years has been trying to get off the ground. It's the largest domestic deposit we have for copper. It also has a lot of other strategic minerals too. It could help us actually achieve mineral independence, but it's staying blocked. It remains blocked by this administration's own Department of Justice. Say it loudly. Copper is a national security priority. Minerals independence, that's what we want. Then we do the exact opposite thing in practice. What are we doing? We're financing corrupt foreign imports of refined cathode. We're exempting them from our own tariffs. We're blocking the biggest domestic source of copper that we have. If this were a corporate board, shareholders would be asking, what's the real policy going on here? Why does copper matter? What's actually forcing the question? Americans' electricity bills are up 28% since 2021. 25%, 1 out of every 4 families in this country can't afford electricity payments now. There's an AI boom. Everybody's talking about artificial intelligence, and it's requiring massive amounts of copper. Where's the copper coming from? Electrification push is going on even if climate denialism is accepted. People are still buying EVs, not at the same rate as they were a few years ago. We have renewable energies. Some people, many people, in fact, are interested in solar energy. And we have the electricity grid, whether we want it or not, and it's old. It needs updating. There's no substitutes for copper to help upgrade the grid. Extreme weather stresses are stressing our 1950s grid in both winter and summer. Where's the copper for grid modernization going to come from? Is it only going to come from Peru or the Congo? Here's a graph that shows copper supply. The graph shows that in 2026, we're now falling into what we can consider as a clear copper deficit. If you look at the red line, the graph just keeps going up, and we're not going to meet our needs. The needs that we have. We're going to be 10 million metric tons short in 2040, and as it keeps going up until 2050, we're 19 million metric tons short. By 2035, we'll be short 35% of the copper that we need, barring any new mining sources or massive innovation. The current U.S. position is weak when it comes to copper. We import 45% of our copper today. The demand and the needs for copper are exploding, as I just said. And our largest domestic source remains blocked for where we could be mining copper, even though the United States Army Corps of Engineers found that the risks to the Bristol Bay fishery, which we'll talk about more in the coming minutes, even though that risk does exist, the United States Army Corps of Engineers said that the risk could be mitigated. So our American strategy seems to be we block domestic development of any mining in general, and specifically copper. It's not in my backyard type mindset, NIMBY. We finance imports of refined copper from countries that have high levels of corruption and weak governance, such as the Congo, Zambia, Peru, and others. And we impose a 50% Section 232 tariffs on finished copper products while exempting the refined cathode that we're actually financing. We're stockpiling $12 billion worth of minerals that we won't produce domestically when it comes to copper. So we're making domestic production policy, and we're continuing to block it in the largest U.S. mine that could be mining copper. Now let's talk about China. What's China's approach? China now controls 50% plus of global copper refining. 4 of the 5 largest copper smelters are in China, or they're owned by China. They own and invest in mines across the Democratic Republic of Congo, Zambia, Peru, and Chile's total overlap with our own interests. And they're securing 10 to 20-year supply contracts with these countries for mining the copper and other minerals. They have an integrated strategy. They mine, they refine, and they manufacture. When it comes to cobalt, which is in all of our mobile phones and other technologies, they control 80% of the cobalt that comes out of the Congo, and the Congo is the major cobalt producing country. They have a 20-year copper security plan with state coordination with the Congo. The critical point here is what? Even if we mine copper domestically, we still lack refining infrastructure. So we mine it anywhere, but we still must process it using Chinese refineries, even with the DRC deal that we're doing. China's weaponized rare earths in October 25, and copper will be next. Our approach, it appears to be logically contradictory policies that are announced in the same week over the past year. Section 232 tariffs exempt what we're actually importing. We have a weak strategic position at exactly the wrong time. So where's our copper come from? If we look at governance metrics, okay, this graph that we're looking at now shows Canada has, according to Transparency International, which is the leading non-governmental authority on corruption globally, Canada has a rating of 76 when it comes to corruption. That's a relatively good score. The United States has a good one at 69. Chile, which we import a lot of copper from, is at 67, so that's not bad. From there, we start to have a fall off. You see that Peru is at 52, Zambia is at 35, and the Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, at the bottom is at 29. That is very weak. So the Development Finance Corporation of the United States did a deal with Jacamine. Jacamine is the nationally owned company in the Congo. On February 4th, 2026, it was announced 6 days after there was the big mining collapse, where 227 miners were killed in the DRC. The DFC, the Development Finance Corporation, announced that 100,000 metric tons of refined copper cathode will be bought by the U.S. buyers in 2026. Okay, great. The irony is this is coming from the Tenke Fungurima mine, which is operated by a Chinese company called CMOC. They own 80% of the mine. The value of the mine and the products in it is $1.3 billion in 2025 copper prices. It's going to be more now because the value of copper futures is going up every single day. So then in 2025 prices, that was $12,960 a ton. The structure for it was a joint venture between Jacamine and Mercuria, which was a Swiss trading firm. So the United States was financing with an equity investment, the amount of which is undisclosed, this mining in that same mine. So part of the Washington Accords that were signed on December 4th, 2025, as part of the peace deal that gave the United States preferential access to the DRC minerals that's currently going to China. And that peace deal that President Trump negotiated was between DRC and Rwanda. So remember, refined copper cathode is exempt from Section 232 tariffs in any case. The logical contradiction is we're imposing these 50% tariffs to reinvigorate domestic production. Then we finance tariff-free imports of already refined product from the DRC, which means that we're outsourcing environmental and human costs under a minerals independence banner while remaining dependent on corrupt countries that can shift on a dime. Jacamine, who are we financing to secure copper? In 2022, the Democratic Republic of Congo did an internal audit. They found that $414 million had disappeared, with $1.5 billion of $2 billion that Jacamine was controlling went to bonuses and snacks, not to operations. The auditor said prohibit future contracts. As far as safety and labor is concerned, in the Congo, there are 9 fatalities a year on average in Jacamine mines. That's 3 times higher the accident severity levels versus the United States. 25,000 to 40,000 children work in mines in the Democratic Republic of Congo. That's according to the United States Department of Labor. Some of these kids that are working in mines are 3 years old to 6 years old. They earn $1 to $2 a day. They work for 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. They don't have any protective equipment. Not good. The chairman was fired in 2021 for diverting billions of dollars. In the 2000s, from 2002 to 2006, I ran a grassroots anti-corruption project in the Democratic Republic of Congo that was funded by USAID, which, as you know, Doge eliminated a year ago under the leadership of Elon Musk. As you can see in the graphic, 82 anti-corruption coalitions were created across the Congo. 94 cents out of every dollar was collected in illegal fees. Nothing was going to public services, safety, or governance. You can see we created a demand-driven model for combating corruption. Corruption and administrative corruption in Congo is called tracasserie, which some people refer to as petty corruption. Everybody's impacted by it. The reason I'm even talking about this, it's not the grand levels of corruption that we're talking about with Jacamine. But the fact of the matter is the context for how things happen in the Congo, unfortunately, it is a weakly governed country, has been for decades, and administrative corruption remains a major problem in the country. So the question for Americans is it sound strategy for us to finance deals with mining companies in the Democratic Republic of Congo while we're blocking strong governance and mining safeguards in the United States that we could be mining here? Given our own needs, is this logical? Okay, if we look at the mine that I referred to before, the Pebble Mine in Alaska, what's at stake? It has $590 to $600 billion worth of value according to 2026 prices. There's 82 billion pounds of copper, which is about the equivalent of 7 years of supply of U.S. production. It could supply 20% of the global shortage of copper in 2040. It also has other strategic minerals such as rhenium for F-35 jets. And since we just started a conflict in Iran this morning, we know that F-35 jets are relatively important for our defense. So yeah, rhenium is important, but right at the moment, we're importing all of our rhenium. There's also molybdenum, gold, and silver. It's 230 miles away from a place called Bristol Bay, which is the most important salmon fishery in the world. But the mine itself remains one of the largest undeveloped deposits on Earth. Rhenium, as I mentioned, is really important. Currently, we're importing all of our rhenium that's used into fighter jets from Chile and Kazakhstan. Democratic Republic of Congo produces 0 rhenium, so we're blocking our own defense materials supply. Let's look at this graphic. It just summarizes it quickly. Pebble has $600 billion worth of minerals: copper, gold, molybdenum, silver, and rhenium. On the other hand, the mine that we finance in the Democratic Republic of Congo has $1.3 billion worth of copper, and the only thing that we're extracting from there is copper in that deal. And it involves all of the child labor that I mentioned, and it's operated by a Chinese company, and there are 9 deaths every year. So how is blocking 5 minerals that are worth $600 billion in a country with strong governance and the ability to provide strong oversight for mining and reduce risk, how is that logical while we're financing 1 mineral in a corrupt mine using child labor? How's that coherent strategy? The policy whiplash, to state the obvious, environmentalists have very good reason to be skeptical about environmental impacts of mining, no matter where they are. The question is whether the strategic stakes and our capacity to manage the risk in mining justify moving past a blanket rejection toward evidence-based decision-making. We've had policy whiplash, and here's a graphic that you can see that will just go through it really quickly of all of the different actions just over the last 6 years that are contradictory when you look at it in detail. What the Department of Justice argued, according to the mine developer, which is a company called Northern Dynasty, in a response to the Department of Justice continued rejection of mining in Pebble on February 19th, the company said that apparently the veto to continue to veto the development of the mine can be based on speculation, which means that the project may cause impact as opposed to will. All you have to show is that there could be impact in Bristol Bay as opposed to there will be impact in Bristol Bay. There was no cost-benefit analysis that's required for blocking the deposit, which I believe is odd. We're not doing cost-benefit analysis at all. The veto covers hundreds of square miles of territory that belongs to the state of Alaska, and far beyond the mine footprint. The EPA findings that were used to justify continuing the blockage, they overrode the Army Corps of Engineers, who signed an environmental impact assessment in, I believe it was 2019 or 2020. The precedent for the danger for this is it creates a precedent because there's a lot of Clean Water Acts under Clean Water Act 404 permits, and there are permits that are issued every year. It's something between $60,000 and $75,000 of Clean Water Act permits are issued annually. All of those could be vulnerable to the same veto logic. The contradiction here is that how can we have an administration that's imposing 50% Section 232 tariffs, declaring copper a national security priority, and have its own Department of Justice defending blocking the largest domestic source that we have in the same year when we're claiming U.S. minerals independence agenda? That's the agenda that we want. So who decides what's going on here? The Native Alaska positions are mixed in this. All of the people who are living around Bristol Bay, which are about 11,000 shareholders of something called the Bristol Bay Native Corporation, are opposed to it. They're, again, 230 miles away from this mine. Those that support it, there are about 900 in something called the Alaska Peninsula Corporation that support it, and they're living in villages that are closest to the mine. The state of Alaska, oddly, the governor wants it, and some people in the administration in Alaska want it. There are senators who are opposed to it. The federal government, under the Environmental Protection Agency, its veto overrides whatever the state wants to do for the moment, though the state is contesting it in court. The pattern is that those closest to the mine support it, those furthest away oppose it, and those very far away, whether it's in New York or other places, they also oppose it too. Okay, another unanswered question. When the Army Corps of Engineers contradicts the Environmental Protection Agency appointees, who's right? On what basis? How is this administration's policy coherent with its own Section 232 findings? For environmentalists, if environmentalists support a green transition, and I consider myself to be an environmentalist, I have solar panels. If we're supporting a green transition to reduce climate change, and we say it's important, where are we going to get the copper to responsibly do it? Where is it going to be responsibly sourced? And if we continue to block the Pebble Mine, are we consciously choosing salmon and local biodiversity over faster electrification and climate goals? Are we prepared to own that trade-off? This is a question. Option A, to do the Pebble Mine. The Corps says there's no measurable impacts. Best in the world, we have best in the world U.S. mining standards. We have the EPA, we have the Corps of Engineers, we have OSHA, we have U.S. courts. Option B, we go to Jacamine, where $414 million disappeared, 9 deaths a year, 25 to 40,000 children working in the mines, little to no accountability, and we get refined cathode that's exempt from the 50% tariffs designed to promote domestic production. We chose B, and we call it securing our mineral independence. So there's no denying that there are risks if this mine were to be developed. The Bristol Bay fishery is a $2.2 billion a year fishery in value. It's a renewable value. It's not going to go away. It could exist in perpetuity. Over a 50-year period, that's $110 billion worth of cumulative value. It supports 15,000 jobs that are sustained annually in Bristol Bay. It has enormous cultural and national value. It's a renewable resource for thousands of years. Again, no one's denying this. The Pebble Mine is a $600 billion one-time extraction. It has a 20-year, I believe, mine operation time frame projected. It probably is going to be more than that were it to be mined. The impacts of mining the copper in the Pebble Mine would be improved electric grid nationally, so it has national level implications. It has implications for jobs and tax revenue generation in the state of Alaska. It has climate mitigation implications. It has AI data center implications. It has non-renewable energy implications. Okay, once all that copper is extracted, it's gone. So the caution is Pebble takes 10 to 20 years to be mined. Once approval is given, it's no panacea. But the shortage that we have is structural. It's not temporary. By 2040 and beyond, we're still going to need massive amounts of copper. Our kids are going to need copper. So we don't just need it now. We're going to need it in 20, 30, 40, 50 years. The choice is we either start now and we operate a responsibly managed mine, or else we could have permanent dependency on countries with weak governance and high levels of corruption and no clear understanding of what's going to happen in the future. The question isn't fish versus copper. It's can 230 miles and best in the world standards be responsibly managed or to reduce risk to acceptable levels when it comes to mining in Pebble. The current policy, permanent dependency disguised as temporary. This slide shows the trade-off graphically. Again, we've talked about this before, so you can just see for the graphic yourself. It's not about dismissing the fishery value. It's about whether financing DRC mining in a corrupt mining operation while blocking our own domestic options is coherent strategy. So the trade-offs, we have climate versus biodiversity trade-offs. We have an odd couple alliance. We have environmental NGOs and fly fisher people who are united in kind of an odd context. Many of those people are MAGA. And so you have people who are opposed to MAGA on the one hand, but then you have people from MAGA that are opposing the development of this mine. None of them, however, are addressing where the copper is coming from. We also have states' rights versus federal prerogatives. Alaska secured its mining rights in 1974. The governor supports the mine. Local natives negotiated that live closest to the mine, but the federal EPA issues a preemptive veto regardless of any mitigation. Who decides? Again, 25% of families in the United States are facing higher electricity bills. They can't afford to pay their bills. Grid modernization is stalled. The Corps of Engineers says that risk can be responsibly mitigated. And salmon seems to be using as a conversation ender, not a conversation beginner. Where do I personally stand? I think that climate change is real. I think stressing the grid is what's happening. We all know it. We feel it in our electricity bills and periodic blackouts. I support logical greening approaches. I think we need massive amounts of copper for grid modernization, for AI data centers that are inevitable, whether you like AI or not, and for electrification. U.S. mining is unavoidable by 2040 or 2050. The math just doesn't support work otherwise. Relying on poor governance countries isn't an intelligent or strategic, sustainable, or ethical option in my view. Since writing my 1992 book on integrating conservation and development for the World Wildlife Fund, I've argued this integration is the challenge of our times. MAGA independence, too, also requires domestic production and strong mitigation. Section 232 says so. We either trust best in the world U.S. mining standards, but that the EPA, the Army Corps of Engineers, and OSHA can be involved in, or we don't. The picture right now is unclear. Salmon and Fly Fishing Alliance is avoiding the hard question both sides don't want to answer. Offshoring mining to satisfy powerful, arguably thin interest groups, while we export harm to far less powerful people in one of the most corrupt countries in the world. And it's not only the Congo, there's other countries too where we're doing deals to get strategic minerals. That, to me, is not a responsible option. It's irresponsible policy, and it's not clear that Americans are willing to confront it yet. My unpopular view is, if you believe in climate action, we need copper. If you believe in American self-sufficiency, we need domestic mining. If you believe in environmental justice, we can't export harm to the children of the Democratic Republic of Congo. If you believe in science-based policy, we can't ignore the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in their environmental impact statement in 2019 or 2020. If you believe the Section 232 zone findings are justifiable, that copper imports threaten national security, then we have to do something about producing copper in our own country and other strategic minerals too. If you believe in affordable electricity for our kids and us is important, we need to mine somewhere domestically. All point to the same direction. I believe that we should try, and we got to go through this national debate. Can we develop Pebble under strong governance and the strongest safeguards, while importing during a transition to responsible mining with the strongest oversight that we can provide here domestically? The alternative, just keep mining where we don't see it, letting other kids pay for it. Strategically and ethically, this is bad. The graphic displays the trade-offs here. If you look at the top right-hand corner, we're offshoring harm, but we got to get down to the bottom right-hand corner, in my opinion, where we have to debate things. There are trade-offs, and trade-offs are inevitable. The question that we have to ask is, can we accept incremental local risk in a country where we have strong governance, where we have the rule of law? Can we accept that incremental local risk to reduce national vulnerability that we now face? Or do we prefer to have zero domestic risk while we export extreme risk to the people of other countries? 5 questions for American leaders. What's the 10 to 20-year copper strategy? Second question is, who decides when federal, state, engineers, and appointees are in conflict in their opinions? Is it a democratic process, or is it just lawyers and current lawfare that decides things? Are we going to remain transactional with the Democratic Republic of Congo, or principle about governance? Are we going to continue financing Jacamine while claiming we care about corruption and labor and safety? If Section 232 says copper imports threaten national security, why is our Department of Justice blocking the largest domestic source of copper? Which one is the real policy? And finally, if we trust our regulatory systems, why aren't we deploying them? If yes, why are we overriding the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers with no clear explanation? The call to action is this: Americans should question their leaders more, because our bills are rising. We're facing extreme weather stresses, and the grid is not responding as well as it should. We have AI demands that are going to be sucking power out of that grid unbelievably. China is locked in supplies currently, and the contradictions keep piling up. This isn't a partisan issue. It's about coherence. We can't impose Section 232 tariffs declaring copper a national security threat, financing imports of refined copper from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and blocking our own largest domestic deposit at the same time. But that's what's happening. That's not policy. That's saying one thing, doing the opposite, and hoping nobody's connecting the dots. Should Americans, wherever they live, have a voice in these trade-offs nationally, or is it only a state of Alaska issue? We still don't have copper policy. We have contradictions. Subscribe to my channel if these questions matter to you. Share if you think your leaders owe us answers. Thank you. I'm Michael Brown, and this is The Unpopular View.